everyone, my report is about Advocacy Coalition Framework. So what is this ACF? The Advocacy Coalition Framework is a theoretical framework in the field of policy studies that seeks to understand how policy change occurs through the interactions of different actors within a policy subsystem. So these actors are the advocacy coalitions, the bureaucratic or the expert, as well as the policy breakers or the entrepreneurs. So it is developed by Paul Sabatier and Hank Jenkins Smith. The ACF was introduced in the 1980s as a way to analyze and explain the dynamics of policy processes. So the AACF is a policy-making framework developed to deal with intense public policy problems. So ACF is best served as a lens to understand and explain belief in policy change when there is a goal disagreement and technical disputes involving multiple errors or multiple actors from several levels of government, also the interest groups, the research institutions, and the media. So first, before we go deeper about ECF, let's have a definition of terms so that we can clearly understand it. So first is the policy subsystem. So what is this policy subsystem? A policy subsystem refers to a specific and relatively narrow domain within the larger political system. Next is the advocacy coalition. So an advocacy coalition is a group of actors. These actors includes individuals, the organizations, and the interest groups. So who join together to promote specific policy goals within a policy subsystems. So next is a belief system. So refer to the shared sets of fundamental policy preferences, values, and casual beliefs held by the members of an advocacy coalition. And lastly is the external events. So these are the occurrences or developments outside the policy subsystem that can influence the policy-making processes. So again, the Advocacy Coalition Framework is a policy-making framework developed to deal with intense public policy problems. So when it comes to public policy problems, then the Advocacy Coalition Framework, which is theory pa, will deal with that. Next is policy change occurs through interactions between while external changes or shock to the political system. So again, the public subsystem is composed of different advocacy coalitions with their own beliefs and sources and their own strategies. So policy brokers or the entrepreneurs are concerned with keeping the level of political conflict within acceptable limits and reaching some reasonable solution to the problem. That is according to Sabatier, 1988, page 141. So ACF uses belief systems rather than interest because beliefs are more inclusive and verifiable. That is, again, according to Sabatier, 1988, page 142. Beliefs can be indicated through questionnaires and content analysis. In each subsystem, there will be about 2 to 4 important coalitions but 20 to 30 organizations active at one time. And specify that in ACF, it specifies that there are sets of core ideas about causation and value in public policy. So these coalitions form because certain interests are linked to them. But more dynamic factors are also present, including socio-economic conditions and system-wide governing conditions, which provide some of the principal sources of policy change. The advocacy coalition involving politicians, interest group leaders, and researchers emerge around higher educational reform. So it is possible to map these networks of actors within a policy sector. Change comes from the ability of these ideas to adapt, ranging around a whole series of operational questions and what works in any one time or place. That is according to John. Next. So this is now the ACF model. So this is the figure 1, general model of policy change. So there we can find various terms like policy subsystem, stable system parameters, the constraint, the external events. So firstly, there are relatively stable system parameters. So basic attributes of the problem area, whether good or bad. So basic distribution of natural resources, fundamental socio-cultural values and social structure, and basic constitutional structure. So from there, it goes to the constraint and resource of subsystem actors, and then it can also be down to external events such as changes in socio-economic conditions, changes in systematic governing coalition, and policy decisions impacts from other subsystems. And then from there, it can also go to the constraints and resource of subsystem actors. After the constraints is go to the policy subsystem, which there are coalition A, policy brokers, and the coalition B. And then from the policy brokers down to decisions by sovereigns, governmental programs, the policy outputs, and the policy impact. And then that policy impact is back again to the coalition A and coalition B, which is the policy beliefs, resources, policy beliefs and resources. And then there is a strategy, guidance instruments, and they have the same strategy, both coalition A and coalition B. So this model is composed of several parts. The relatively stable system parameters, this can be within and outside the subsystem. It influences the external events. Both of this impact the constraints and resources of subsystems. That's why constraints and resources of subsystems is in the center, because both the relatively stable parameters and the policy subsystem like impact to the constraints and resource of subsystem. So there we have already defined what are policy subsystems. Again, policy subsystem focuses on specific policy subsystems, which are subsets of actors such as individuals, groups, organizations. It is involved in a particular policy area. These subsystems operate within the larger political system. So next, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this framework, or the ACF? So the contribution of this model is that the concept of policy subsystem is used as a basis for developing a theory of policy change by relating it to the larger political system and viewing advocacy coalitions rather than formal organizations or free-floating actors as the key units of internal structure. ACF has been designed specially for policy area characterized by a high goal conflict, high technical uncertainty about the nature and main cause of the problem, and the large number of actors from multiple levels of government. The framework has been applied to a considerable amount of cases, in particular in issues regarding sa energy, environmental, or social policy disputes, but also ACF can be applied to education in order to solve policy problems. The Advocacy Coalition Framework was developed to provide a theoretical and analytical framework for understanding the complex dynamics of policymaking, particularly in areas characterized by deep policy conflict and multiple competing interests. So the framework expects actors to perceive the world through a set of beliefs. Hence, the concept of ideas and their origins plays an important role. But the ACF also has a number of challenges. In particular, it is very difficult to determine the beliefs of the main actors, map the advocacy coalitions, and establish all the external and internal factors which can affect the policy subsystem. The ACF has been designed specially for policy areas characterized by high goal conflict, high technical uncertainty about the nature and causes of the problems, and a large number of actors from multiple levels of the government. So, in conclusion, the Advocacy Coalition Framework provides a comprehensive and systematic way to study the complexities of processes, emphasizing the role of belief systems and coalition dynamics in shaping policy outcomes. So the Advocacy Coalition Framework again provides a comprehensive and systematic way to study complexities of policy processes, emphasizing the role of belief systems and coalition by dynamics in shaping policy outcomes. It has been applied to analyze a wide range of policy areas, including environmental policy, health policy, and educational policy, and among others. So the framework helps researchers and policymakers understand the forces at play in the policy arena and how they contribute to the evolution of policies over time. That's all, everyone. Thank you.